What's up, guys? DDK here, and I wanted to talk to you about three important words: practice, review, study. Good 10-second pause there as I got a mental block, but practice, review, study. Now, this is generally speaking a good formula for success, especially if it's any kind of skill-based activity, and just generally speaking, it's pretty important to have this kind of a process. Of course, you can mix it around, but basically, it's a symbiotic relationship for improvement. One thing really needs another for you to be on the right path when it comes to improving properly. So let's take this in the context of commentary, and also take this in the context of being a player, as these are the two most important things, I guess, coming out of this channel. Stuff to do with commentary and playing. I guess those are the two biggest identities that I'm going to have. So essentially, do the thing, take massive action, just do loads and loads of practice. Of course, that's really important, but you have to have practice that actually makes sense. Like the practice needs to actually be reviewed. You need to see what's going on there. And the problem is that this is where many people get stuck, because they get to this point where it's like, okay, I've practiced, kind of don't want to do any review. And the reason that usually happens, in my experience, is because the person doesn't know what to look for. They don't know how to approach the reviewing process. A lot of people do this naturally. A lot of people do it without thinking about it. And for example, you watch a player that you like, and you kind of play like that player, and you watch a team that you like. You kind of, you copy some positions and all this kind of stuff. You try it out in the game. You find this out. This what doesn't work. This works, and so on and so forth. But for a lot of people, it doesn't happen on a very conscious level, where you're striving to achieve it through brute force almost. Where you sit down and you say, all right, so I'm going to practice. And then you've practiced, and then you're going to say, okay, so this was good, this was bad, and whatnot. But what really is important is the third part, which is the study of the said practice, said discipline. Because if you're studying it, then that's going to then inform your review process, which then informs your playing process. So it's kind of it goes from A to B to C to C to B to A, basically. It just keeps going backwards and forwards. And this is a very natural way and a gradual way of efficiently improving and spending your time. Because essentially, once you have studied the game, you're going to be able to review yourself much better. You'll be able to say, oh, well, positionally, this was kind of wrong. Or, you'll be able to say, well, I've learned about timings now. So now I am more cognizant about where I should be standing at this point of the round, or when my teammates are doing this, I'm more cognizant that I should be standing here, I should be doing this, or I'm more able to attack this area now because I've done some studying, I've learned some new tactics, which I can then implement into my game. Then through a review process, you can see whether that actually works for you or not, and whether it needs to be cut, and so on and so forth. You can see whether execution is an issue. Is execution an issue? Well, that's usually a pretty easy one, because you can be kind of outcome oriented with that, so you don't necessarily need to go to the studying aspect. But the entire point of the studying aspect is to eliminate frustration. To be honest, it helps to do that. It helps with that massively, because you know more what you're doing. You're always trying to accomplish something when you go to practice. So when you're going to practice, you can say, okay, execution is not super hot, let's do the deathmatch. But more specifically, it's this weapon. More specifically, it's this type of technique. More specifically, it's maybe even this kind of map. Like you can get quite specific with what you want to practice, and you're small chunking the bigger problem. And the bigger problem is becoming a much better player and having much better results, and being a more rounded player, being a player which has better intuition, better game sense. And you're able to accomplish this through rigorous training, but rigorously informed training, and it is informed by review and study. So you see how the process works here. So the same thing goes for when you're talking about commentary. So I can take this as an example. So for any of you out there who are interested in becoming a commentator, and you have the passion to put into it, then you need to be able to also apply this process. Now, again, practice. You need to get in the commentary. You just got to get it in. Then you've got to sit back and listen to yourself. And you'll listen to yourself, you hear words that you repeat, things that you like, you don't like, and you can say, okay, I like this, I want to do this more, I want to do this less, that was good, that was bad. Then you go to study, like, what is commentary? What is the point of commentary? What should I be trying to achieve? And then you need to take it a step further, and then after understanding what you're trying to achieve, let's say engagement, let's say building tension, informing the audience, working with another commentator, you take it to the next level, and you're like, okay, so these are the kind of criteria I'm looking for. How do I find it? Well, now you go to study the two that I used the most was Tosspot and Joe Miller, because Tosspot, Joe Miller I will start with. He's, to me, like the master of fundamentals. He does the basics so well, like he's a complete natural in that sense. But he doesn't do anything complicated, so it's very easy for more or less anyone to take some of the very basic principles that Joe Miller uses when it comes to stuff like pacing, pacing and tempo and volume and so on. It's much less stuff going on, but it's done very well. And having someone that's a fundamentalist in this way to try to aspire to or try to understand is always very valuable, and you should look after this in every single field. If it's Counter-Strike, it's the same. Find a player that's not flashy. Don't go and copy Kenny S. Don't go and copy JW. Don't go and copy these kinds of players who are just flashy. I know I just named two AWPers, but just don't go for the really flashy players. Go for the players that like move the least. Go for the players that do the simplest things, that have the best fundamentals. They're always there for the trade. They always know their smokes and their flashes. They're always in the right spots to support their teammates. They're always, correctly taking fights and positions. So try to find out which player that would be, and that's the one you want to try to emulate, because it's going to encourage you to have better habits on a level that is not requisite of skill necessarily. It's raw skill, like your Kenny S and your JW and your Simple. Like these players, they're star players based around complete skill. So in fact, what they're doing is actually playing on a level that no one else is playing on. But in understanding the fundamentals and finding a player like that to emulate, much as you can with certain commentators for certain things, because commentary, of course, it's lots of different skill sets, and some commentators are much better at certain skill sets than others. And of course, to me, like Joe Miller and Tosspot are really good in this way, because Joe Miller is amazing, really, really good. But with Tosspot, he's got a degree of technical prowess with some more complex skills, like his diction is amazing, for example. His use of phrases, basically. His enunciation is very good, and his ability to modulate his voice is very, very strong. And his fundamentals when it comes to broadcasting professionalism, but not being too professional, and being enough entertainment, but knowing exactly when to throw it in. These kinds of skill sets are very, very he does those very well. But Tosspot, you can't just go after Tosspot. I actually tried to do it at the beginning. I tried to emulate him too much at the beginning, and of course it was I learned through the mistake. It was a little bit impractical in that sense. But then if you also want people that have really good enunciation or use of language, you can go to someone like Total Biscuit. Someone who doesn't maybe do a huge amount of commentary, but there's a lot of value into what he's doing. And the same thing can be said for like some NBA commentators, or which I looked at a lot. Of course they all have the voice, and I don't have the voice. So you should be able to find commentators that don't have the voice. If that relates to you, and then see, okay, how are they making this sound good when they don't have the voice? Like, what are they doing to achieve that? Is it a pacing thing? How are they using their voice? Because you can change the way that you use your voice with projection, like coming from a deeper, more grounded place, which is what I have to try to do. I have to consciously maintain and present a more grounded, a deeper push with my voice, because naturally I wasn't like that. And if you look at my very old stuff, you'll understand that I was very, very much up here in the throat. I don't have a naturally deep voice or resonant voice like a lot of the commentators, or a naturally wonderfully British sound like James has, or I don't have the unique broadcaster kind of sound that's very characteristic, but different to make them stand out, like Tosspot and DJ Wheat. But these things can be overcome. There's a huge amount of skill sets going on and things that are involved in just speech. So in that sense, it's very, very similar. Again, looking towards the player's perspective. If you because AWPing It's very different to pistoling. It's very different to using certain rifles with certain techniques and certain positions and certain ranges. And of course, these are all skills that need to be practiced and honed for a greater versatility and adaptability in all the situations you want to find yourself in, to be the most rounded, complete practitioner of said discipline, whether that be playing the game at the best level that you can, or whether it's being a commentator, or whether it's being more or less anything that's skill related in life. It all requires practice, review, and study. And of course, you've got to swap those things around and figure out what makes sense. But yeah, so that is my advice. If you want to improve really fast, then do it like that. And something that's even more effective in that sense is write stuff down. Like, write stuff down. If you are looking at a particular commentator, or like link a YouTube video for reference sake. Say you want to you really like the pacing of Joe Miller. Okay, pick out a video and then listen to the pacing. Look at the situations in which he uses certain paces, and reference yourself back to it. Like, create like a to-do list where you've got your all the people that you like. Let's say it's like, break it down to skill sets, I guess. Like, so make a list. Sorry, it's ignore the to-do thing. Make a list. Break it down to skill sets. So pacing and tempo, volume, diction, modality of voice, like the ability to also change the mode of your voice. Like write down all these skill sets, and then put a video or some resources of someone who you think who does these things the best. Basically, this is actually what I tried to do, or what I did. Well, I didn't try to. I actually did do it, but I tried to achieve success in this way a long time ago, and I found it did help massively, because what it does is it shifts your focus into something very specific. And in doing so, you're able to build skills specifically and not just try to just mush it all together and not really understand what's going on. Because once you've clearly understood many elements, now all of a sudden you can tweak everything. You can say, well, I understand this. I've already gone back to, let's say my pacing was really bad, or my ability to adjust volume, okay? And I went back to a next cast and I was like, okay, I want to improve in my volume control, like to create more engagement and more excitement, and to allow me to better create and sustain and complement the tension in the game. Okay, that's your objective. So you go into these casts and you for 2 weeks straight, maybe, depending on what you want to do, you focus on that one thing, and you keep reviewing it, and you keep going back to those original videos that you linked, and then you see how close you're coming to what you think is correct based on what you've seen and what you've identified personally as what you think sounds the best with those skill sets. But you have to be able to break things down. It's called small chunking, actually. This is I don't know what the term is from. Whether I imagine it's probably an economics term, probably a term in psychology and all kinds of things. But basically, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's small chunking. It's creating like baby steps. It's having a big problem and then chunking it down, basically. And then once you've again have done all these things and pushed all the concepts together, but they are clearly defined, you can then improve even more quickly, because you're not just blindly just going for it. And if you are someone that doesn't want to put the work and effort into being good at something, well, you need to then reevaluate the goal that you have of being really good at that thing. So yeah, there is my advice. Something I would also say when it comes to commentary that's not skill related is that you have to also bear in mind that to any aspiring commentators out there, or people who want this, you have to bear in mind that your passion. I would assume that if you're doing this, if you wanted to do it, that you're passionate about it. You have to find ways to make your passion visible and make yourself unique in the value that you offer the community. Because you cannot just sit on the desk, because you have to stand out right on the desk. Like, being talent is this entire point. You cannot just go onto a desk or something or do some commentary. You can't just sound like everyone else. If you want to be really successful, you need to have your own interests. You can't be completely consumed by just Counter-Strike. And this is something that I sometimes find myself, I can get very easily consumed in just one thing. So you need to try to also be an interesting person. Okay, so you need to try and find other aspects that are interesting and valuable to bring into your cast. Now, if you're not like a super hardcore analyst, well, this can be something like, even let's say some sports psychology stuff, or just generally just even if you're a really humorous person, then fuck it, you've got that as your value. Like if you're just naturally really humorous, but you can't really fool yourself or fool the community into a situation where it's like, well, you're not humorous but you're trying to be humorous, or you have to accept basically what value you can bring, like your unique selling point. Basically, you need to accept that, develop it, and you need to make that come into play. Because if you're not able to do that, then it does make it more difficult in standing out, I think. And if you're putting the work in, it's very visible. People respect that. People will see the work that you put in. If you're studying the game and you understand the money system very well, you've looked at some demos, so you understand, let's say Hellraisers are going to play a match, and you've watched some Hellraisers demos recently because you anticipated that they would have some matches coming up. It is very time consuming to do this, by the way, very time consuming. That's why people respect it, and a lot of people don't notice actually how time consuming it is at the same time, but whatever. It's all about the value that you end up bringing into the cast, and that's all people will see. So, you see this setup that they're using and you're like, oh wow, okay, this is how it went before, and this is what they were trying to achieve. So now what you've done is you've created an anticipation for the viewers. You've invested them in the present and the future possibilities from the present. That's engaging. That's like an engaging and informative way to do your commentary. And this is one of the things I learned early on, at least when I was trying to understand what is commentary. Like, how do I small chunk something if I don't understand it? I quickly realized, well, it's about, your job is to engage the viewers. It's to engage the viewers, and it's to complement the game, basically. That's basically, there is a lot more going on, of course, but that's more or less a good rule of thumb, I think. So for me, and what I would say is, okay, hey, my job is to engage the viewer. What is not engaging? What am I doing that's not engaging, and what is engaging? And I found that too much hindsight stuff can be very disengaging for the viewer, because you're pulling them into the past too much. Now, there is good times to do it, but only if it adds value and engagement to what's happening, and if it adds something interesting that's relevant to the match. Because you can get very carried away as a commentator when you spot something really cool, but it's not really relevant. It's not really going to be engaging moving forwards. It's a very, very hard balance to strike, actually. It's probably one of the most difficult things, because you don't always have a lot of time to actually talk about stuff. But the problem is what happens is, the problem with this is that it can happen that through talking too much about the past, you're now missing, but you're not paying attention enough to what's happening now. And then again, this is a huge dilemma for casters. It's very difficult. So you're not paying attention to what's happening now. And something that helps, by the way, is a side point. If you are studying the game a lot, you'll read the game much more quickly. So you can kind of cheat in that way. But you won't be paying attention to what's happening now, and there could be something very, very interesting or crucial in the way that team's setting up. Now, again, if you're a commentator that has honed these skills and practiced a lot, watched a lot of games, studied the game a lot, you'll have a really good sense for when this round is fairly meaningless. Sometimes it's very obvious, and the value can come from the hindsight stuff. Well, not the hindsight. I won't put it like that, because hindsight analysis is not good analysis. But your analysis of what has happened can then come in, and it's a good timing. So there's lots of stuff going on with commentary, lots and lots of stuff that makes it difficult. And of course, we all the simplest fuck up that we all make is repeating stuff, and that just happens sometimes. And sometimes you fix it and it'll come back later on when you think that you fixed it. But if you're reviewing frequently, then you'll likely be able to avoid this. And by the way, yes, it does suck listening to yourself, and you don't get used to it. So I hope this was in some way useful for some people, and maybe provided some perspective or insight into what it's actually like trying to improve as a commentator. Now, if you have any questions about any of the above, or the behind, I guess, because it's a video, throw them in the chat and I'll try to answer. I can even maybe actually I'll do a Q&A sort of thing. So if people ask questions, then want to ask questions, and I can answer them in a video, and just kind of like do sort of like a QA AMA sort of thing, whatever the hell that would be. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.